Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Monday. Welcome to another edition of Crunch Time. This is a huge show. First of all, Scott, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing very well, man. This is going to be a fun show for me, which I'm sure it will be for you. We'll be going through each division, talking about each team, talking about who's going to win each division, who are going to win each award, things like that. And so I'm excited along with you. Scott, let's get into it, man, because I've been like sweating to get this show going for a long time. The National League East, I want to start there first because the National League East is a very intriguing division. You had the Miami Marlins making the playoffs last year. You still have the Philadelphia Phillies in that division. I think they're going to be a better team this year. They actually have another bullpen option besides Hector Neris. You always have the Atlanta Braves and you have the Washington Nationals, but go through each team, Scott. What intrigues you about each of these teams?
Well, let's talk. Let's start with the team that won the division last year, the Braves. You look at that team, and they've got the really good lineup. You've got the young studs in Acuna and Albies. You brought Marcell Ozuna back. You've got the reigning MVP and Freddie Freeman there. So you've got a really stacked lineup. You've got Dansby Swanson. It'll be interesting to see what they do at third base. It sounds like they're either going to give Austin Riley or Christian Pache that opportunity to at least start the season. Although I don't know if you saw this the other day, Kung Fu Panda did make the roster. So there's a chance that we can see the Panda play in third base for the Braves.
Man, I thought his career would be over by now. I didn't even realize he caught on with the team, to be honest with you. I've been paying attention to, obviously, the Cardinals camp, but, I'm kind of glad we're getting to see Kung Fu Panda again. Hopefully he's the same self he was in for all those years in San Francisco. Once he left San Francisco, he wasn't the same guy at all.
No, and the pictures I saw the other day, he looked about the same. He looked like he'd put his weight back on. He looked big. But apparently he's hit like crazy for the Braves, so that'll be an interesting option, at least off the bench for them. The thing that worries me about the Braves is that I'm still worried about their rotation. I like the top of their rotation with Fried and Soroka, but then you've got Charlie Morton, who is pretty good for the most part, but he's getting up there in age. And then you're counting on guys like Ian Anderson and Drew Smyly to fill out that rotation, a couple of guys that have been around for a while. So a little bit worried about the back end of their rotation, but other than that, I think the Braves are going to be pretty good, and I think they should be right in the hunt in the East. What do you think?
I think they should be in the hunt too. I mean, I question the back end of their rotation, of course, but that offense is all world. I like Acuna Jr. I love Freeman. I love Albies. Bringing Marcell Ozuna back was huge. I mean, a lot of people in this town wanted him back, but good on the Braves to actually keep him. To be honest with you, I didn't think he was going to resign. It wasn't until late in the offseason that he resigned. So good on them. So I think they'll be in the hunt, but this is going to be a tough division. Scott, go ahead.
Yep. Next, we'll take a look at the team that everybody talked about all offseason. They definitely had the most hype, and that would be the New York Mets. When you take a look at the Mets team, they went out and made the big splashy trade for Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco, and they signed James McCann to be their new catcher. But talk about that Mets team. They were the talk of the offseason. Everybody thought they were going to go out and spend all kinds of money and bring in a guy like Trevor Bauer and bring in George Springer. They didn't really make those super big splashy free agent moves, but they do have a really good lineup. You look at their lineup, they've got guys like Michael Conforto and Pete Alonso in the middle of that lineup behind Lindor, so that should give them pretty good pop. And then you have the way they've got their lineup set up right now, they actually have McCann hitting eighth. So, they've got a pretty solid lineup where you've got pretty good bats up and down the lineup. And then you talk about that Mets rotation, and probably them and the Dodgers have the two best starting rotations in the National League when you look at Jacob deGrom, Carlos Carrasco, Marcos Stroman, David Peterson. Noah Syndergaard will be back at some point. Joey Lucci is going to fill that spot, but Syndergaard will be back probably May or June, early June at the latest for the most part. So you look at that Mets rotation, and they're really, really going to be tough.
Yeah, that Mets rotation is always tough, always something you have to look out for. And we knew going in when Steve Cohen bought the team that they were going to spend some money. They were going to be in on these big guys, and they got Francisco Lindor. It'll be interesting to see if the Mets can actually do anything because, the Mets have always had an aura about them. You always think they're going to be a good team, and then they come out and met it up. That's the only way I can put it, Scott. The New York Mets just met everything up. It's like the New York Jets. They're like the New York Jets in my mind of Major League Baseball. Hopefully they can get out of that conversation for me at least. I mean, Scott, you're looking at me nuts. You're looking at me nuts, but you realize, what have the Mets done lately?
They were in the World Series a couple of years ago, or in the National League Championship Series a couple of years ago against the Cubs.
They're not consistent.
They did play in the World Series against the Royals. They've been around, man. It's not like they're horrible.
No, they're not.
They played
horrible.
The National League Championship Series against the Cardinals in 2006.
I just want to see a team like that, turn the corner. And you have guys like J.D. Davis. You have Michael Conforto. You have guys in Pete Alonso, the polar bear. And then you have that pitching. I just want to see more out of them. Lindor, and adding Lindor, by the way, is probably the best thing they could have done. But where do you see the Mets finish? Well, do you see them being a contender?
Oh, yeah, they're definitely a contender. Like we said, that's a really tough division. But they are definitely one of the front runners to win that division. Going on with the National League East, we'll go on and start talking about the Washington Nationals. And that's a team, they're going to be really interesting this year because they've got a guy in Juan Soto who everybody talks about being the next superstar. But then, you look at what the Nationals did last year. Their offense really didn't do a whole lot other than Soto. He really didn't have any protection. So they went out and they got Josh Bell and they got Kyle Schwarber to put in the middle of that lineup. Both of those guys had really down years last year. I think the Nationals' fate kind of depends on if they can bounce back. If Schwarber can have a year like he had a couple of years ago in Chicago, then their offense could be really good. If Josh Bell has the year he had 2 years ago in Pittsburgh where he was an MVP candidate, then that Nationals offense could be really dangerous. If they struggle, I don't see the Nationals being able to score a whole lot of runs. And then you look at their rotation, and you got names in that rotation. You got Scherzer and Strasburg and Corbin and Lester. But all of those guys are getting older. We know Strasburg has health problems. Lester's had some issues in the last couple of years. Scherzer had a couple of small issues last year. So you just wonder if that rotation is going to be able to stay healthy and if that lineup will be able to produce. I think they can still make a run, at least at a wild card. But, everything's kind of got to go right for them. What do you think?
Everything has to go right for them. And, getting some bats back and it is a huge. I mean, think about this. Ryan Zimmerman, the oldest 10-year player on that team, has had a killer spring. He's killed the Cardinals once or twice this spring. So, I mean, yes, it's spring training. You don't really look at stats in spring training, but he seems refreshed after a year off, and maybe that'll give him an extra year of production. I mean, if we don't know how much a guy like Ryan Zimmerman can play at his age, I mean, you have a first baseman in Josh Bell, but that's a dangerous bat off the bench.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, you have a late inning situation, and you can bring a guy like Ryan Zimmerman up. That would be huge for them. And I think that's where he's going to play the most, unless because there's starting to be rumors popping up again, a little hint here, a little hint there that we may still see the DH before opening day on Thursday. So don't rule out the fact that the National League pulls the DH out again on opening day.
Are you serious, Scott? I thought this was dead, at least for this year.
Nope, not dead. Not dead. I mean, it's not a done thing, but there are some whispers here and there that it may still happen. Maybe, just like last year, right at the beginning of opening day.
Oh, man, I don't know if I'd be ready for that if they make that change right away. But, hey, if that happens, Scott, maybe we have a new CBA by opening day. Do you think that's a possibility?
No, there's no chance there's a new CBA yet. Yeah, that's going to take a while. But,
okay.
If they do get the DH thing figured out and worked out, that's a good sign. That's definitely a positive sign if they both sides agree on that. And after watching pitchers hit in spring training, it might not be a bad idea to bring back the DH. And the weird thing is, not every team has even had their a lot of National League teams haven't even had their pitchers hit in spring training. They've been using the DH all spring training long. So some pitchers haven't even swung a bat.
Well, the St. Louis Cardinals are one of the few teams in the NL that are having their pitchers hit, and yeah, it hasn't looked good. So, I mean, it could be for the best too. I just think if you're going to go into spring training, you should already have that rule in place. But that's just me. You did say, Scott, it would be a while for that rule to be implemented if it was. So, what do we got next?
Next, we're going to talk about a team that's probably the most confusing team in this division, and that would be the Philadelphia Phillies. Because when you look at this team, you look at their lineup especially, and you think, okay, Andrew McCutchen, JT Realmuto, Bryce Harper, Rhys Hoskins, Alex Bohm, Didi Gregorius, Gene Segura, and Odubel Herrera, you think, okay, that lineup should be able to really put up a lot of runs. And they can, for the most part, when they can stay healthy. But McCutchen's had a lot of health issues the last couple of years. So Hoskins has not been as consistent as they wanted. And then you look at their rotation again, and they've got those two pieces at the top in Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler. But then the back end of their rotation, can Matt Moore be what he was a few years ago? Can Chase Anderson step up? And then they've got a young kid filling in that fifth spot named Zach Eflin, who's one of their top pitching prospects. But again, he's young. So a lot of questions about the Phillies. Again, if things go right, they could be really tough. If things don't go their way, they could be the same team we've seen the last couple of years where they're just in the middle of the pack in that division. What are your thoughts on the Phillies?
It all hinges on what Gabe Kapler can do on the bench. If he can push the right buttons with that team, they're going to be scary because I like the front end of their rotation. I love their offense. They need to win a World Series with Bryce Harper. They need to win at least one or two to even they need to win a World Series to justify that contract.
Who did you say was?
I'm sorry. That's on me. That's on me. Joe Girardi. What am I thinking? I thought he was there still. I don't know why. Sorry, boys. But no, Joe Girardi's going to be huge for me. I think he's a good manager. He's going to lead this team. It's been shocking to me, Scott, how this team hasn't had more success under Girardi. Granted, he hadn't been there long, but are you shocked that they haven't been a good team under him yet? Really?
I mean, they made a little bit of a run towards the end of the season last year, but you got to remember that Andrew McCutchen was hurt most of the year. Bryce Harper had a monster year last year, but the rest of that team, Rhys Hoskins didn't do a whole lot, and their pitching struggled, especially the back end of their bullpen really struggled and the back end of their rotation. So their pitching has to step up. I mean, it can't all be Bryce Harper. These other guys have to contribute and put up numbers too. So like we said, if the rest of that lineup can stay healthy because they've got the names there, and in that ballpark, you would think that group of guys should be able to score some runs.
Yeah. By the way, anybody listening, that was a brain cramp on my part. So don't read anything into that. The last team that we should talk about here, Scott, obviously, is the Miami Marlins. This is a team that was a playoff team last year. Granted, 60-game season. These kids played out of their mind. Their pitching starting to come into their own. I like Sandy Alcantara at the number one spot. Sixto Sanchez is a good pitcher. They just have young kid after young kid that can play. So what do you think about the Miami Marlins? They might be even a contender at this point.
I think they're still a year or two away from really being a contender. I mean, we saw them get into the playoffs last year in the short season, and I like their pitching. Like you said, you mentioned Sixto Sanchez and Sandy Alcantara, who we know here in St. Louis. They've also got kids named Pablo Lopez and Eliezer Hernandez and Trevor Rogers filling out that rotation. Their lineup is what makes me nervous. I mean, you look at the middle of their lineup, you've got Starling Marte hitting second, and Marte was good when he got there last year at the trade deadline. Broke his hand, which hurt them going into the postseason. But he liked it there. They re-signed him. The middle of that lineup, there are 3-4 hitters, Jesus Aguilar and Adam Duvall. That's going to be the big key for this team. If those guys can kind of get back to what they were a couple of years ago, if Aguilar can look like some form of the guy that he was in Milwaukee 2 or 3 years ago, and if Adam Duvall could have a year like he had in Cincinnati, all those years, if you could get them back into form, that lineup could be really dangerous. If not, then there's not a whole lot in this lineup to really look at. I mean, after that, you've got Brian Anderson and Miguel Rojas and some guy named Jazz Bishop. So, I mean, not a whole lot of lineup that's going to scare you other than those guys. So they really need those three guys and Marte, Aguilar, and Duvall to really carry this offense.
Actually, Scott, Jazz Chisholm, I think that was Jazz Chisholm, one of their top prospects. He should do great things in Miami. Another guy that really needs to get going in my mind is a guy like Lewis Brinson. We need to see a little bit more development out of him. He was a big-time prospect in Milwaukee, and maybe we're starting to realize why Milwaukee moved on from him. But Lewis Brinson is a key for them.
They don't even have him. They don't even have him scheduled to be in their starting lineup opening day. So apparently the hopes aren't real high for him right now. He is on the roster, but not in the starting lineup.
That's crazy because you need guys like that starting. But like we've talked about it a lot, Scott. Not all of these prospects seem to work out. So I like where Miami's going, though. I think they are a year or two away. But how would you fill out the NL East?
All right. So the way I did my East, I have the Mets winning that division at 93-69. I have the Braves coming in second at 90-72, 3 games out. I have Washington in third place at 87-75, 6 games out. Phillies 84-78, 9 games out, and I have the Marlins at 80-82, 13 games out of first place. What did you do?
I have the Atlanta Braves winning this division. I have Washington being a close second. I didn't go with records because that's a lot of numbers. I think I'd get a headache after that. I'm just going to go teams. So Atlanta first, Washington second, Philadelphia third. I think the Mets finish fourth because they're not a known commodity that's been a team that can be competitive every year. So I have them fourth, and that's not saying they're going to be far away from first place at all, because this is going to be a tight division. Then I have the Marlins rounding it out.
That's interesting. The Mets fourth. Wow. Yeah, that surprises me. All right, so we did the NL East. Now we're going to jump across and do the AL East.
Now, can we start with a team, Scott? And I hate to jump on you, but can we start
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Can we start with the Toronto Blue Jays, a team that I had winning this division last year, and how close I came to being right? They have a lot of young stars: Bichette, Biggio, Guerrero Jr. I mean, they have legacy star after legacy star on that team, and great offense. They have Lourdes Gurriel Jr. At first base. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But they have him in their offense as well. The only question I have with the Toronto Blue Jays is their pitching. Hyun-Jin Ryu is their ace, and he's not an ace in my mind at all. That's the one thing and we've talked about it on the show, Scott, about what they needed to address, the biggest thing they needed to address. And pitching was one of them, and they really didn't do it. So I don't see them doing a lot in this division. I mean, I think it's one team's division to lose, and I'll talk about them later.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've talked about the Blue Jays all year last year, their need for pitching, and like you said, they really didn't get it. Hyun-Jin Ryu is going to be their number 1, Robbie Ray's their number 2, and then Nate Pearson is number 3, and then they're counting on Steven Matz and Tanner Roark to fill out that rotation. And those guys are serviceable major league pitchers, but nothing that really gets you excited about. The Blue Jays spent a lot of money. They went out and got George Springer, who's hurt and isn't going to be able to play on opening day. They went and got Marcus Semien, who's hurt, isn't going to be able to play on opening day. And they signed Kirby Yates to be their closer, and he's out for the season. So the Blue Jays spent a lot of money, but as of right now, it's not looking real good for Toronto.
It really isn't. And I want to see this team go forward. But again, pitching is the name of the game, and they didn't go out and do anything. I like what potential Pearson has, but he's the only one I'm excited about in this rotation, what he can do. So that's it on the Blue Jays right now.
Yeah. moving on, let's take a look at the Yankees. And this is the team that everybody thinks it's their division to win. And, I mean, it truly is when you look at this team. I mean, you've got the lineup stacked up and down with DJ LeMahieu, Aaron Judge, Aaron Hicks, Stanton, Gary Sanchez, Gleyber Torres. The guy they're gonna miss to start the season, the American League home run leader, Luke Voigt, is gonna miss the start of the season. So they're gonna miss his bat a little bit early in the year. But that lineup is deadly. And then you talk about pitching being the name of the game. The top of that rotation in New York with Garrett Cole, Corey Kluber, and Jameson Taillon. I think the Yankees have fixed their issues with their rotation from the last couple of years. I think they're going to be really, really deadly with that top of their rotation.
You know, the one guy that I question when it comes to that rotation is Luis Severino, mainly because of his health. Scott, do you think he could have a bounce-back season in that rotation too?
He's not even in the rotation to start the season. They're throwing him in the bullpen.
Maybe to stretch him out, but he will be in the rotation at some point. I mean, the Yankees have talked about how good this kid. You don't think so?
I don't know that he will. With those three guys, and then you've got Domingo Germán in the 5 spot and the young kid Jordan Montgomery. I'm not sure that Severino cracks that rotation. You may have him in the bullpen. He may be one of those guys that kind of like the Cardinals have talked about with Alex Reyes, where you get him 80, 90, 100 innings and, just have him be a dominant piece for a couple innings in the middle of games or in the late part of games to make that bullpen even deeper.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a great bullpen piece, that's for sure. But, I guess if you're the Yankees, you kind of go away from him being a starter, but that's interesting to me. Next, let's go to the Boston Red Sox because this team got Alex Cora back as a manager, but they don't have guns. They don't have pitching. Their offense is it's not atrocious. I shouldn't say that, but it's another rebuilding year for Boston, that's for sure. And it doesn't help that you still have JD Martinez's contract on the books, him not opting out and everything. So that's another blow to the Boston Red Sox. What do you think about this team?
Their pitching's the big issue. Their lineup's not that bad when you look at it. JD Martinez actually was tearing the ball up in spring training this year. You look at the middle of that. You look at that lineup. Alex Verdugo at the top, then Xander Bogaerts, Rafael Devers, JD Martinez, Christian Vasquez, Hunter Renfroe. You can see that first 6 guys in this lineup really scoring some runs, and then their top prospect, a guy that a lot of people have winning the American League Rookie of the Year, Bobby Dahlbeck, their second baseman, hitting in the 8th spot. They could actually be tough. Their rotation is where you look at it and go, man, that's scary because Chris Sale's not going to be ready till probably the end of July, first part of August after having Tommy John. And then Rodriguez, their other semi-ace, is out. He's going to miss most of April. So Nathan Eovaldi is going to have to lead that rotation for the first month or so of the season. And then you've got guys like Garrett Richards and Martin Perez and, they're Nick Pivetta. So, I mean, again, not a scary pitching rotation. So I think it's going to be another, like you said, down year for the Red Sox, but I think they're going to be a little bit better than they were last year.
Getting Alex Cora back as your manager, that does help. Going on Alex Cora real quick, do you think he deserved to be hired back so quick?
I guess they didn't think there was enough proof that he really did enough wrong that he didn't deserve a second chance. And so he got out in front of it right away. And so I guess everybody deserves that second chance to redeem themselves, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's, I guess, everybody deserves a second chance, right, Scott?
Yep, they do, for sure.
So, yep. What about the Tampa Bay Rays? Because this is a team that went to the World Series last year. Granted, it was a 60-game season, and it kind of played into their hands when you think about it. They relied heavily on their bullpen. Now they had a couple of nice starters last year that left the team. I mean, Blake Snell, one of them. Charlie Morton was a big blow in my mind, losing him. You still had that bullpen, but Scott, this may not be that good of a team in terms of pitching this year. It may not be good.
I mean, you still got Tyler Glasnow and Ryan Yarbrough at the top of their rotation, but Wags and I talked about this the other day when you weren't able to join us. You know who the number 3 starter is that the Tampa Bay Rays are counting on?
Who?
Michael Wacha.
So the Rays are counting on Michael Wacha to be their third in their rotation. Why?
Yep.
What? Like, how? Can you explain it? Because I can't. That makes no sense.
It's where you know who their fourth starter? Their fourth starter is 45-year-old Rich Hill, and then they're going with Reclamation Project Chris Archer as their fifth starter. So there's a lot of questions about that rotation, and I would be worried about it if I was a Rays fan.
Watch Chris Archer have a great year because he's back in Tampa. Just watch that happen. It defies belief. And then watch him have a great year, and then Pittsburgh will be like, why didn't he do that here? But that's just me. I like Austin Meadows. He didn't have a good year last year, but again, a lot of players had down years. It was a 60-game weird season, so I see a bounce back from Austin Meadows, though, this year.
Yeah, they need him to, because you look at that Rays lineup, and there's nobody there that really impresses you. I mean, everybody's going to talk about Randy Arozarena, but, I mean, let's be honest, there's no way that he's going to be the same player that he was in the postseason. I mean,
no.
He could be good. It's possible that he has a really good year, but it's also possible that he doesn't. And if he doesn't, that lineup's in trouble, because after Austin Meadows, then you're looking at guys like Brandon Lowe and Manuel Margot and Joey Wendell to try to carry this lineup. And, you know, I think the Rays are taking a big step back this year.
I think so too. And you want to talk about a team that's probably I'm already making this prediction that they're going to be last in this division because it's obvious. The Baltimore Orioles, they do have some nice pieces, and I like where they're going. What do you think about Baltimore?
Yeah, they're a team that, like you said, is going to probably struggle again. You know, they've got some names, some young guys that are starting to make a run. It'll be interesting to see, though, a guy like Trey Mancini, if they're really struggling at the trade deadline, do you move on from a guy like that and trade him and try to get some more pieces and even build this team up even more, because you know it's going to be a couple of years before you really compete? I mean, I can see them doing that. Matt Harvey's in their rotation. I mean, that should tell you a lot right there, that they're counting on a guy like Matt Harvey to try to bounce back and do something in this rotation. And after the struggles he's had the last few years, there's just not really a whole lot to say about Baltimore. There's a bunch of guys other than Mancini that nobody really knows. And, you know, Freddie Galvis and Maikel Franco. But, you know, when were the last time either one of those guys really did anything in the major leagues noteworthy? So I think it's going to be a long year for Orioles fans.
I think it will be too. It's sad to even think about, because Baltimore at one point was a very good team. Granted, they couldn't get over that hump, but I liked what Baltimore, when they were competitive, I liked that team. So what do you got? How do you round out this division?
The way I did the division, I have the Yankees winning the division. I have the Yankees at 99 and 63. I actually have the Blue Jays in second place at 90 and 72, 8 games out. I have the Rays at 87 and 75, 12 games out. I have the Red Sox at 79 and 83, 20 games out. And I have the Orioles at 70 and 92 and 29 games out of first place. How do you have them stacked up?
I basically have that same prediction when it comes to at least putting these teams in order, because I got the Yankees, I got Toronto in second place, actually, no, I don't. Boston in third place, Tampa in fourth, and Baltimore in fifth. I think Tampa takes that much of a step back, because you lose the quality pitching like you did. And going on, if you're going to keep bullpenning, that bullpen's going to be worn out by the All-Star break. So I sudden change there, I know, but I just don't see Tampa being above Boston at this point.
Yeah, I did, just because I still think their rotation's better with the Red Sox. I mean, if Chris Sale was going to be there all year, I might have put the Red Sox ahead of them. Not having Sale and not having Rodriguez early in the season, I think the Red Sox are really going to struggle early.
Yeah, so the Red Sox won't be good. I think it'll be a great battle for last place in that division. That's for sure. When it comes to the Reds, when it comes to, you know, in my mind, Tampa and Baltimore. So Yeah, we shall see how it plays out. This will be an interesting division. Going back to the NL, you got the NL West, and this is a very top-heavy division, potentially, because you don't know what Arizona is. I mean, we thought they would take a step back, and they actually played out of their minds. So you don't know where Arizona is going, but you have the two at the top. You have the Los Angeles Dodgers and the San Diego Padres, and then you have the Colorado Rockies and San Francisco Giants. But why don't we skip the top two first and talk about Arizona, because this is a team that we thought that.
Let's start with the team. Let's start with the team that a lot of people think may have a really rough year, and that would be the Colorado Rockies. You know, the Rockies, of course, traded Nolan Arenado to the Cardinals for not a whole lot other than Austin Gomber, basically.
Yeah.
And, you look at that Rockies rotation, and right now Gomber's set up to be the number 2 guy in that rotation. So hopefully Austin can have a good year. As a Cardinal fan and a guy that likes Austin Gomber, I hope he has a good year. But you look at that Rockies lineup, and they've still got Charlie Blackmon, and they've still got Trevor Story. And those two guys, it's going to be really interesting to see, because I think if the Rockies have a rough year, if they start off slow, I think you can see Trevor Story and Charlie Blackmon both get traded at the deadline. What do you think?
I could see them both getting traded by the deadline. Look, I've been reading a lot of the Rockies Facebook page, every post they've put on, and everyone fire British, sell the team, Mumford, sell the team. It's getting ridiculous in Colorado right now. No one's going to show up there. And you know what? I don't blame Rockies fans in a sense, because you traded your best player and $51 million to the St. Louis Cardinals for nothing. So that to me signals you don't really care about winning. And again, I'm a Cardinal fan, and I thank you for that. But at the same time, as a baseball fan, what the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing?
No, that relationship was beyond repair between Arenado and the front office in Colorado, and they wanted to get out from under that contract. So that's how that works. So do you think Blackmon and Story both get traded by the trade deadline, or either one of them?
I think so. I think they get out of there, but it'll be interesting to see when they do it, because I think it could be before the deadline. And if they do it before the deadline, they can maximize their return for guys like Blackmon and Story. Story would, I think, get you a better return because he is younger, but I still like Blackmon as a player. What do you think Blackmon would get you at this point?
I mean, he would still be a good outfielder for a team that's in contention, that's missing that one outfield piece. He could be a top of the order guy, or he could be more middle of the order. Actually, it looks like Colorado is going to have him be their cleanup hitter this year. Story third, Blackmon fourth, after years of him being the leadoff hitter in Colorado. So he could do either one of those things. He's still a pretty decent outfielder. He's a little bit older now, but I think a team that's in playoff contention that needs an outfielder, he would be a nice piece.
I think he would, but what about Story? I think Story can get you the most. I think he can get you a couple big time prospects, maybe a lower end prospect. What do you think?
I mean, you should be able to. I mean, because he's a little bit younger and because he's of his talent and the position he plays. I mean, in all honesty, he should probably be able to bring you almost as much as Nolan Arenado should have brought you. The problem they're going to run into with Story is that whoever trades for him, they're only going to get him for a half a season, and then he's a free agent. So teams aren't going to be willing to give up a whole lot because you're not sure you're going to be able to re-sign him. So that's where it gets tricky for Colorado. Is I'm not sure. Probably if they wanted to maximize what they were going to get for Trevor Story, they should have traded him about the same time they traded Arenado.
I think so too. Now, since we're going in the doldrums of this division first, let's go with the San Francisco Giants, whose manager is Gabe Kapler. That was on me earlier. But the San Francisco Giants, while they're older, they have some pieces they can build around. I like Mike Yastrzemski.
Yeah, Yastrzemski showed some stuff the last couple of years. I mean, you look at him and you go, okay, there's a building block. But then you look at the rest of that team, and I'm not sure what they're doing. You went out and signed Tommy LaStella, who's an older, middle of the infield guy, and then you still got Buster Posey, Brandon Belt, and Brandon Crawford, who are all way past their prime. So while Yastrzemski is a decent piece, there's just not a whole lot there at the major league level around him anymore to really do a whole lot. And then kind of you look at their rotation, and Kevin Gausman's not a bad piece at the top of their rotation. But then you've got Alex Wood and Johnny Cueto and Anthony DeSclafani as your 2, 3, 4. None of those guys should give you a whole lot of confidence, I don't think. And then Aaron Sanchez, who's got some upside, is your 5. But I think the Giants are just kind of stuck because you would think they're trying to rebuild, but at the same time, they keep bringing in these older players and signing them to big contracts. So I'm not really sure what the Giants front office is actually doing.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure either, and that's a bad spot to be in. You're trying to compete, and you're also trying to rebuild at the same time. It's not a great place to be. So I don't know what to think of the San Francisco Giants. I like to think that they have a clear grasp on where they want to go, but it doesn't seem that way. The Arizona Diamondbacks, this is a team I talked about that they always seem to play above expectations. We thought maybe a couple years ago they were going to struggle. They actually played really well and contended in that division. I mean, to an extent. I mean, you had the Dodgers at the top winning everything. But they were a second-place team at one point not that long ago. So what do you think about the Arizona Diamondbacks?
I mean, they've got some pieces that I like. I really like Ketel Marte. I like Christian Walker. Carson Kelly, who we know a little bit in St. Louis. I like Nick Ahmad, their shortstop. I like, so they've got some pieces. David Peralta is still a pretty good player, although he's had injury issues the last couple of years, has a hard time staying healthy. I like that I like that lineup. Their rotation, Zach Gallen at the top, Mad Bum. Again, if you get Madison Bumgarner somewhere close to his prime, if he can bounce back a little bit, that gives you a nice 1-2. And then Luke Weaver, who the Cardinal fans know as well from the Paul Goldschmidt trade. I mean, Weaver's had a good year and a bad year in Arizona, and that's kind of been his career in the major leagues so far. He has a good year, and then he has a bad year, and then he has a good year and a bad year. If he can kind of settle down and be more consistent, that could be a nice 1-2-3 in the middle of that rotation. And then they have a young kid, their 5th starter, Merrill Kelly, who they have a lot of high hopes for. So the D-backs, I think, can be decent. I think they'll surprise some people. But again, like we talked about, this division is pretty top-heavy. So how far they can climb in that division, I'm not real sure. And that's going to bring us to another team that made probably the most moves of anybody in the offseason, and that would be the San Diego Padres. Joe, what do you think of the Padres?
The Padres are on paper, again, you have to play games on the field, not on paper, but on paper, they look like a really good team. I like their rotation. I love their offense. And the one guy that's not talked about, because you have guys like Tatis Jr. and Machado on your team, is a guy in Eric Hosmer. He was the main focal point of that Kansas City team winning the World Series in 2015. So I like Eric Hosmer. I always wanted the Cardinals to go after a guy like that, and they never did. So I think this team can be really good. Do I think they edge out the Dodgers? I don't know. But, Scott, again, we haven't seen this team play on the field yet, so it's kind of hard to gauge.
Yeah, and you brought up Eric Hosmer being kind of the heart of the Kansas City team. And when you think about it, Hosmer was really the beginning of this Padres team. The Padres went out and overspent to get Eric Hosmer there. I guess that'll be 4 years ago now that they went and did that. And everybody was shocked that Hosmer went there. And then the following year they bring in Machado, and then they bring in Tatis, and so they've just kind of built. Eric Hosmer was kind of the first building block to where the Padres have gotten now. But yeah, you look at that lineup; it's pretty scary when you can go Tatis, Machado, Hosmer, Tommy Pham, Will Myers. They were going to score a lot of runs, hit a lot of home runs, and their rotation, if it's healthy, could be really good. I mean, you got Lamet at the top of that rotation. I've got some questions about you, Darvish. They spent a lot of money on Darvish. Are they going to get the guy that was the Cy Young winner for the Cubs last year, or the guy that couldn't get anybody out in the 2 years before that in Chicago? I just don't know what Yu Darvish is. And then I've also got questions about Blake Snell, their other big rotation move, because you bring in a guy like Snell and you big name like that, and you're expecting him to come in and be a workhorse. But as we know from his days in Tampa, Blake Snell hasn't thrown more than 5 innings in a game in like 4 years, because that's not how Tampa does things. So is Snell going to be able to be that guy that can kind of lead that rotation, or is he going to be a guy that gets 4 or 5 innings and he's shot? So that's going to be really interesting. And then Joe Musgrove is another guy who's been solid, but he also has health issues, as has Chris Paddock, who's in this rotation. So, there's a lot of upside there, but there's also a lot of questions with this Padres rotation.
I'm high on Chris Paddock. I hope he has a good year. It's tough to gauge this team. The team that I can gauge, Scott, is the Los Angeles Dodgers. Defending World Series champions, basically the same team coming back, minus maybe 1 or 2 guys. I think a key subtraction for them, though, was a guy in Kike Hernandez. I like Bellinger. I like Turner coming back. What is Kenley Jansen going to give you? What's Clayton Kershaw going to give you at this point? You know what you got in Walker Buehler. But, man, I've always questioned the Dodger pitching. And I also question on that pitching, where does Julio Urias fit in this rotation? Or does he fit in this rotation? Because they've been so hesitant to start him over the last number of years since he's been up. So there are a lot of questions with this team, but they have a really good team, man.
You forgot about the biggest free agent signing in baseball in that Dodger rotation. They got a guy named Trevor Bauer.
But Trevor Bauer, to me, he hasn't been a consistent winner in his career. That's what scares me about Trevor Bauer. And he has a little bit of an attitude problem. Attitude in Los Angeles may not mix so well. And Scott, you're looking at me crazy, but I don't know, man. I just don't think that's going to work out for the Dodgers. I could be wrong. I really could be, but
I don't think Trevor Bauer has an attitude problem. I mean, when you hear people that play with him and people that cover him, he's a baseball junkie. He wants to win. I mean, yeah, he's a little outspoken sometimes, but, he's all about winning and winning games and wanting to win. And, he's never had a team like this behind him either. He's had, Cleveland had some good teams, but they didn't have a lineup that was stacked. You look at the Dodgers' projected lineup, Cody Bellinger's hitting 6th in this lineup this year.
Yeah, that's scary.
That's pretty scary if he's your 6th.
I had no question about this lineup, but Scott, what does a guy like Justin Turner bring to this team at this stage of his career?
He's the heart and soul of that team. That's why they brought him back. That's Wags and I talked about that. He's the leader of this team. That's the whole thing with the World Series and them dragging him out, getting him on the field, even with the COVID issues, was because he was the heart of that team and they wanted him out there with them no matter what.
Understandable.
He's still a solid player. I mean, is he going to put up huge numbers? Probably not, but he doesn't have to. I mean, if Justin Turner hits 3rd in that lineup, plays decent third base, and gives you 18 or 19 home runs and drives home 80, they're perfectly good with that, with the guys they've got around him. The other guy you forgot about in the Dodger rotation, they've got David Price too. So, that rotation is Kershaw, Bauer, Buehler, Urias, and Price. That's pretty damn good.
So I'm shocked. Are you shocked at this point that they have Urias as a potential number 4 starter over Price?
No, just because, and it makes sense because they're trying to split it up, because you've got the left-hander and Kershaw at the top, and then Price, the left-hander, at the end of the rotation, and kind of just working it around that way. So you've got you're going lefty righty there. So they're setting it up so that you don't have all of one, either right-handed or left-handed, going every day. So it makes sense.
How do you have this division rounding into shape?
I've got the Dodgers winning it. I don't have them winning it as big as some people do. I've seen people have the Dodgers with 105 or 106 wins. I'm not going that high. I have the Dodgers at 97 and 65 winning the division. Padres 93 and 69, 4 out. I have Arizona in third at 86 and 76, 11 games out. I've got the Giants at 78 and 84, 19 games out. And I have the Rockies at 71 and 91, 26 games out of first.
What about you? Scott, you know what? I think I'm going to repeat that. I got the Dodgers in first. I have San Diego second, Arizona third. Yep, basically what you said, because this is a really, in my mind, an easy division to pick. Like I said, because it is so top heavy.
Yeah, I mean, the only team that I have, that could sneak up and surprise you is Arizona. And, that comes down to, do the Padres have any issues with their rotation? And if the Diamondbacks rotation steps up, if a Madison Bumgarner is the guy that he was in San Francisco, and if a guy like Luke Weaver has a really big year, the D-backs could be right behind the Padres, surprisingly, because the D-backs do have a really good team, like we talked about. So that could be closer than you think.
Yeah, it could be closer than you think. Let's go to the American League West, because this is an interesting division, Scott, because you have the Houston Astros, you have the Oakland A's, Texas Rangers, LA Angels, and Seattle Mariners. Seattle's probably going to be bringing up the rear. At least that's what I think. I'm not going to go any further in terms of predictions just yet. But let's talk about a team that they're kind of like the San Francisco Giants in my mind. They're rebuilding, but they're not at the same. They're trying to compete, and that's the Texas Rangers. Texas is a very interesting team. Opened a new ballpark, so they're going to want to be somewhat competitive. What do you think of Texas?
Well, and you got to remember, too, the Rangers are, most ballparks, most fan bases are saying, like the Cardinals, are letting 30%, 40% of fans in. The Rangers said, nope, we're going 100% from opening day. So they will have a jam-packed, full ballpark, full capacity in that new ballpark in Texas on opening day. The bad thing is I don't think they're going to see really good baseball. There's not a whole lot, to be honest with you, that I like about this team. You look at this Rangers lineup. In the middle of the lineup, you got some guys that could put up big numbers. You've got Joey Gallo, David Dahl that they signed after the Rockies released him, and Chris Davis, who they traded for with Oakland. And all three of those guys could put up huge numbers. They could all three hit 40 home runs. They all three also can strike out 200 times each. So you just don't know what you're going to get out of the middle of that lineup. It's pretty much going to be all or nothing. And then, other than that, there's not a whole lot in that lineup. Rougned Odor has gone downhill big time the last 2 or 3 years. He's a shell of the player that he used to be. Willie Calhoun doesn't do a whole lot. Ronald Guzman is just a guy. I mean, the lineup doesn't really scare you a whole lot other than those three guys. Like I said, it's pretty much home run or strikeout for the most part. And then you look at their rotation, there's a lot of questions there too. I mean, their number one starters are going to be a friend of the show and a guy we like a whole lot in Kyle Gibson. But I'm not sure that Kyle Gibson is a number one starter at this point in his career. He's probably more of a 2 or a 3, but he's forced to be the number one. Then their number 2 is Mike Foltynewicz, who they're counting on to bounce back. Then after that, it's Jordan Lyles and Dane Downing and Colby Allard. I've never even heard of most of these guys.
Dane Dunning is supposed to be one of their prospects, and they're expecting a lot out of him. So hopefully he progresses, because that's a good pitching prospect right there.
But again, he's a prospect, so you don't know what you're going to get out of a young prospect.
Exactly.
Especially when you don't have a whole lot in that rotation around him. So I think it's going to be another tough year for Texas fans.
Let's go to Northern California and let's go to Oakland, because they lost two big pieces to that franchise. One being Marcus Semien, the other being Chris Davis to Texas. But how much of a step back, if at all, is Oakland going to take? I mean, we talk about it all the time, Scott. We see this team all the time as being close to cellar dwellers, and they just shocked the crap out of everyone. So, I mean, I like their rotation. I just don't know where their offense is going to come from outside of Olsen and Chapman. So maybe, and my bad, maybe Ramon Laureano. Out of those three guys, and even I hear in the background Stephen Piscotty. Stephen Piscotty's not been that great either. So
Stephen Piscotty, he wasn't totally healthy last year, but you look at Stephen Piscotty's career. In an average year, he's going to hit about 270, give you 20, 25 home runs, and 75 or 80 RBIs. That's not a bad right fielder. That's pretty good. And play Gold Glove caliber defense. So Piscotty's not a superstar, but he's a really solid piece. I actually like this team. Mitch Moreland's there. I mean, Mitch Moreland's bounced around, but all Mitch Moreland does is hit. So he's going to be okay. They traded Chris Davis. They lost Marcus Semien, but they replaced Semien with Elvis Andrus, who is more of a glove than a bat at this point, but his defense will shore up that defense. And Jed Lowry's coming back to Oakland. If Lowry can bounce back and be some part of the hitter that he was in Oakland in the past and play second base, that could give them could definitely help their offense. Like you said, I like their rotation. I like Trevor Rosenthal as their closer. I think Oakland's going to be fine. I think this division is pretty weak overall, and I think they're going to be okay. I think they're going to be right there in the hunt. That's going to bring us now to the next team. And this is a team that's dominated this division for a long time in the Houston Astros. But the Astros have a lot of issues this year. When you look at their rotation, I mean, Framber Valdez, who they were counting on to be in their rotation, is gone for the year. Justin Verlander's not going to pitch this year. So that forces Zach Greinke to be your number one. And I don't think Greinke's a number one at this point. And, they went out and signed Jake Odorizzi, but Odorizzi, they signed him late enough in spring training. He's not going to be ready to be in the rotation for the first couple weeks of the season. So their rotation is going to be tough for the first couple of years. Plus, Alex Bregman is hurt. He's going to miss a little bit of the beginning of the season. So while they still have Carlos Correa and Michael Brantley, Jose Altuve, I think this Astros team is going to have a pretty big step backwards this year. What do you think?
I think they will have a step backwards, Scott, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think they win this division. And I know I'll save everything else for later, but they win this division based off the ugliness we see from the next two teams. But Houston, they're getting older, and Carlos Correa is going to be a free agent. You don't know what you're going to get out of a guy in Jose Altuve. He is getting older. Hopefully you get the same kind of Jose Altuve you have been getting. But this might be toward the end for Houston in terms of their run. But that's saying they're the front runner in this division because the next two teams are so bad in my mind. The Los Angeles Angels and this team, I don't know what the hell they're doing. Okay, you go out, you have a first place lineup. You have Mike Trout at the top of that. You have, Anthony Rendon, Justin Upton, Albert Pujols. Granted, a 40-year-old Albert Pujols at this stage of his career, but still, you don't go out and get any pitching. When you do sign Pujols, you sign C.J. Wilson. How'd that work out? And they really haven't developed any pitching since then. So the Los Angeles Angels are a disgrace to me. I don't get this team. Scott, can you explain Artie Moreno to me? Because I can't figure him out.
I don't really understand it either, and I agree with it. But what's funny is if you look at most national pundits' predictions, about 80% of them have the Angels winning this division, and it's not even close. And I don't understand how. Like you said, their rotation, they did go out and get Jose Quintana. They made that trade with the Cubs. So they have Quintana, and they're counting. I think this is a horrible mistake. But not only are they counting on him being in the middle of their lineup, they're counting on Shohei Ohtani to pitch a lot this year. What that means, I'm not really sure because they're actually listed as having a 6-man rotation. Here's what I'll just run down their rotation, Joe. You tell me which one of these pitchers scares you. Dylan Bundy, Andrew Heaney, Jose Quintana, Alex Cobb, Griffin Canning, and Shohei Ohtani.
The one name that because he has had success on both sides of Chicago, would be Jose Quintana. But that's about it. And on top of that,
I don't
Scott,
understand.
On top of that, he's also reuniting with his manager on the north side in Joe Madden. So that could help too.
Maybe Dexter Fowler is going to carry the Angels to the AL West Championship.
Hey, maybe Albert Pujols has a renaissance.
I wouldn't mind seeing Albert have a renaissance and have a really great year. But I agree with you. I don't think the Angels. I'm not sure why people are so high on the Angels because I just don't see it because of that pitching.
And that brings us to the cellar dweller, the prototypical always cellar dweller team in the Seattle Mariners. Didn't get off. Spring training did not get off to a good start. When you have your president going on the Rotary Club and talking about different things, that didn't set a good tone. I do like some of the pieces they have. I like Kyle Lewis. I like Jared Kelenic. He's going to be up this year. He's one of their top prospects. They talk about him as being really good. So those are the only two guys that I like. I like Marco Gonzalez in the rotation, but other than that, this team doesn't. Nothing scares me about this team. Nothing. Even Kyle
they've got
Seager,
some pieces in that rotation. You've got Marco Gonzalez that you talked about. James Paxton went back to Seattle, and they have Justice Sheffield, who when they got him from the Yankees in that trade was a pretty high prospect, and he showed some signs. A couple other guys in their lineup that I like. I still like Kyle Seager. Kyle Seager can still put up some pretty big numbers. And then the other guy who's coming back from a health issue and was on the verge of being a star before he had health issues was Mitch Haniger. And I think he's going to be a big part of that team too. Although it wouldn't surprise me if they're a bottom dweller at the trade deadline if they don't move some of those pieces at the deadline to try to bring in even younger pieces. I could see Marco Gonzalez getting traded at the trade deadline. I would think a lot of teams would have some interest in him.
Yeah, I would think so too. So how do you have this division rounding out?
So like we said, this division is kind of weak. I don't have anybody in this division winning 90 games this year. My first place team, I have Oakland winning the division. I have the A's at 89 and 73. I have Houston coming in second at 86 and 76. The Angels are third at 80 and 82. The Rangers are fourth at 75 and 87, 14 out. And in the fifth spot, I have the Mariners at 69 and 93. So I only have the A's and the Astros being over 500 in that division. Everybody else is a sub 500 team. And I think Oakland's got enough to win this division this year.
I think I got to go Houston, Oakland, Angels, Texas, Seattle. That's my five right there. And I picked the Angels third because I like their upside over Texas right now. So that's my top five in that division. Do you have any questions on any of those, Scott?
No, I mean, you kind of have to. I mean, Texas and Seattle, the way those teams are built right now are kind of your bottom dwellers just because, like we said, they're both rebuilding. And unfortunately for Seattle, they've kind of been rebuilding for like the last decade now. But now let's move on to a division that everybody or at least a lot of people that are watching us, this division is near and dear to their hearts. We're going to talk about the NL Central. And since we're talking about the Central, let's talk about the team first that everybody wants to talk about, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Are you?
I like your tease there, Scott.
Everybody wants to know what the Pirates are doing. And it was a bad offseason for the Pirates. The Pirates lost a lot. There's not a whole lot to look at on this Pirate team and be really excited about right now. You look at the middle of the lineup, there are a couple of nice pieces. Gregory Polanco is still there, and if he's healthy, he can still be a big piece. And then Ke'Bryan Hayes is a guy that I think is a future star in the National League. He showed signs of that last year. His dad, Charlie Hayes, was a really good player in the major leagues for a long time. So I like those two guys. You look at the Pirates' rotation. You've got Steven Brault at the top of it. Chad Cole, Tyler Anderson, Mitch Keller, JT Brubaker is the rotation for the Pirates right now. So any of those guys scare you a whole lot?
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
So yeah, I don't think things are too bright in Pittsburgh right now. I don't think fans are really excited for opening day.
I don't think fans are, and it's going to be a long year for Pittsburgh. Let's go to the Cincinnati Reds, and this is always a trendy team for some reason. They didn't really do much in the offseason. They're minus Trevor Bauer now, which he was a big part of that rotation last year. It took them to the playoffs. I do like Luis Castillo. They lost Raisel Iglesias in their bullpen. That's a huge loss right there. So right there, I like their offense with a Eugenio Suarez. You have Joey Votto, which I think can have another good year. I mean, I think he's going to go back to his power hitting ways, which he needs to do that and try to hit the ball out of the park more, because he has the power to do it. And I don't know why he changed his approach, because clearly it didn't work. You have Jose. Wait. You have Castellanos in the outfield. I don't know how much you're going to get from him, but they do have a good offense in Cincinnati. But I question their rotation and their bullpen now that they lost a couple pieces.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the top of that rotation, and you still got, like you said, Luis Castillo and Sonny Gray, although he's been slowed by injury. I'm not sure he's going to be ready to start the season. They were supposed to make that decision either today or tomorrow, whether he would be on the active roster. Same thing with Joey Votto. Votto had COVID and then had a couple of other issues, so it wasn't for sure that he would be out there to play against the Cardinals in this first series. But yeah, I mean, they've got some pieces. I'm really curious to see, because during spring training they had Suarez playing shortstop. They moved him from third base, tried to stick him at shortstop. I wonder how that experiment goes, and I wonder if focusing on playing a new position in such a demanding position at shortstop, if his offensive abilities goes down a little bit because he's so focused on playing a new position.
I like that they're moving Moustakas back to third, though. That's his main spot. I like what he brings to the Cincinnati team in Moustakas, but this team, I don't know what to say about this team anymore. They just seem to be in cruise control in terms of being unpredictable. We thought they were a team to watch last year. They didn't make the playoffs, but it was a 60-game season, so we'll have to see what happens.
They did make the playoffs.
They did make the playoffs, but that team to me wasn't a playoff team. But again, that's a 60-game season. That's a totally different animal. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say they made it to the playoffs. They just didn't score a run in the playoffs. Remember, they had those two games one game against the Braves where they played 16 innings before anybody scored, and then they got shut out in the second game as well.
Yeah, that was bad. Now let's go to Milwaukee, because Milwaukee is a team that could contend with the St. Louis Cardinals for this division, but I'm wondering how. Go ahead on Milwaukee, Scott.
I think Milwaukee's going to be better than people think. I kind of criticized the Brewers most of the offseason, said they're not doing anything. I like what they did. I like the Colton Wong move. I like the Jackie Bradley Jr. move. It shored up their defense at second base and in the outfield. And then with Wong, it let Keston Hiura move to first base because he was a horrible defensive second baseman. So Hiura moves to first base, fills that hole, and then you have Colton Wong at second. I think Christian Yelich is probably going to have a bounce back year. He had a really down year last year. They brought Travis Shaw back, who had some really good years in Milwaukee earlier in his career. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. And then their rotation, Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns are both pretty good young pitchers. So we'll see how their rotation lines up. They've got some youth to it: Adrian Hauser, Brett Anderson, Freddie Peralta. So their rotation could be dangerous. And their bullpen is still pretty solid when you look at what they've got coming out of the back end of that bullpen. They could be tough. I think they're going to be right there competing all the way to the end for first place in this division.
The Chicago, I think Milwaukee will be there too. And another team that intrigues me is the Chicago Cubs because they still have the offense. Their pitching's taking a step back. You have Bryant, you have Rizzo, you have Baez, again, great offense. But your number one gun right now, and he's a good gun, is Kyle Hendricks. Outside of that, their rotation is absolutely awful. Scott, what is Chicago this year? Are they trading Bryant before the deadline?
I have no idea what this Cubs team is going to be. And you talked about Kyle Hendricks. He got hurt running the bases the other day, so they're not sure Kyle Hendricks is going to be ready to start the season. That's another one of those last-minute decisions. But you look at the rest of that rotation, Jake Arrieta's back in Chicago, but he's not the same guy. Zach Davies, who we know from his years in Milwaukee, Alec Mills, and then Albert Alzolay is their fifth starter. I don't know what the Cubs are going to do. If they get off to a bad start and they really struggle at the All-Star break, at the trade deadline, I think it's very possible that you see them try to move Contreras, who they've been talking about trading forever. I think it's possible they move Bryant. I think it's very possible they trade Jock Peterson. And, they may even look at trying to move Jason Hayward and Kyle Hendricks. So, I think it's possible that at the trade deadline, if the Cubs don't get off to a good start, this could be a completely different team in August than what starts the season in Chicago.
Yeah, I think so as well. And what kind of start do they have to get off to for that not to happen, Scott?
They've got to be right there in contention. They've got to be within a couple of games of first place. They have to be hot. They have to score runs. They have to pitch well. And that's the one thing this team hasn't been able to do. With all those names we talked about, their offense has not been very good the last couple of years.
Chris
Bryant's been banged up. Anthony Rizzo hasn't been quite the same the last couple of years. Wilson Contreras' numbers are down. Javi Baez was awful last year. So, we'll see if this offense can bounce back. And then their rotation. But, yeah, I would say if they're more than 5 or 6 games out at the trade deadline, at the All-Star break, and then at the deadline, I think there's a very good chance you see wholesale changes there.
Now to go to the St. Louis Cardinals. And this is a team that, after acquiring Nolan Arenado, is, in my mind, the front runner in this division. The questions I do have about this team, what are you going to have in right field now that Harrison Bader's not going to be there for a little bit? In center, you have Dylan Carlson center. You have a rotation in right field. Unless you're going to have Justin Williams be your everyday right fielder until Harrison Bader gets back in center, that's going to be a question. Another question I have is this rotation. Now, I don't have a question with Wainwright or Flaherty. I do have questions with the other three, though. You have seen some good things this spring from Carlos Martinez. Then you have John Gant and Daniel Ponce de Leon. Ponce de Leon did not have a good outing his last start. So, granted, again, spring training, I get it. But it's been a trend for Daniel Ponce de Leon. If he has something go wrong, it's going to go very wrong, and it's going to go very wrong quick. So, that's a main question. How much is Yadi going to play this year? How much are we going to see Andrew Knizner? That's another question that surely needs to be asked. I know Yadi's going to have the lion's share of time, but if you're going to, kind of showcase a guy in Andrew Knizner, you need to have Knizner at least playing 2 times a week. So what are your questions with this team? Because I have a little bit more of a list of questions than I thought I would about this team.
The rotation you definitely have to have questions about. Gant and Ponce, you have to worry about them in that 4-5 spot. I think they'll be okay for a while. You definitely don't want to go through the whole season with those guys as your 4-5 starters. The questions are, when does Miles Michaelis come back? Does Miles Michaelis come back? That's a big question. And then, everybody keeps talking about KK. Oh, when KK comes back. Oh, when KK comes back. What do we really – we saw 30 innings from this guy last year, and everybody talks like he's a seasoned veteran in the major leagues. He didn't pitch much this spring, and I know he was a little banged up, but what I saw from him wasn't good. And he wasn't very good at the end of the season last year in his last 2 or 3 starts or in the playoffs. So I do have questions about the rotation a little bit. Their lineup, I think Justin Williams is going to get the shot in right field, at least to start. I think he's going to get a week or two to see if he can do it. If he does struggle, I think you'll see Lane Thomas back up here before Bader comes back. I know Austin Dean made the team, but I don't really see Austin Dean being an answer in right field. I think he's more of a bench bat. Kind of the same thing with John Nogowski. I know there's a lot of people really excited about John Nogowski, and I like John Nogowski. I think he's a really good bench bat. Or if the DH would come in the National League, I think that would be a possibility. But I don't really see him playing in the outfield a whole lot. I think, like I said, I think Justin Williams gets that shot. And then I think Lane Thomas, if he struggles, I think Lane Thomas is up here until Harrison Bader comes back. And I think this team will make a trade at the trade deadline to shore up their starting rotation, honestly. That would be my expectation if any of these guys struggle. But I think overall, they're the best team in the division. My other question, and I don't know if you heard this today, but Tommy Edman, as of right now, is the backup center fielder if Dylan Carlson gets a day off. So that means Matt Carpenter is going to get plenty of time at second base, and they're going to have to play him.
Yeah.
More than likely, if a DH would happen in the National League, Matt Carpenter would be your DH, at least against right-handed pitching to start the season.
Man, I wish you wouldn't have said that to me because I don't want to see Matt Carpenter. I understand why you have to see him, but I just don't want to see it, man. It's sad.
Did you see what Matt Carpenter did today?
It's one game, Scott. It's one game.
It's a sign, though. I know, but
hey,
you have to look at it as
many
positives.
times, Scott? How many times have you said it? It's spring training. Don't pay attention to spring training. I don't care.
No, I know, but I was joking for the most part. But he did have 2 hits and an RBI today.
Hey, okay.
And I don't think Matt Carpenter is going to play a ton, but they are going to get him at bats because they've got to see if they have anything left there. But overall, I think this team, like I said, I think they are the front runner in this division. How do you have this division lined up, Joe?
Ooh, okay. This is a tough one. This is a very tough one. I have the St. Louis Cardinals finishing first. I have the Milwaukee Brewers second, Chicago third. I have Cincinnati fourth and Pittsburgh fifth. Actually, no, I'll flip-flop that. The Cubs fourth, Pittsburgh fifth, Cincinnati third, because I do like Cincinnati's couple starters in that rotation. So I'm going to go St. Louis, Milwaukee, Cincinnati, Chicago, Pittsburgh.
All right, so I went, just to tell you how I went with the Cardinals winning this division. I have the Cardinals having 95 wins, which would be the third most in the National League behind the Dodgers and the Padres. So again, the Cardinals at 95 and 67. I have the Brewers in second place at 89 and 73, 6 games out. I have the Cubs at 86 and 76, 9 games out. I have the Reds at 500, 81 and 81, 14 games out. And I have Pittsburgh at 73 and 89, 22 games out of first place.
Man, I'm shocked you don't have Pittsburgh worse. What 73 wins?
You know what? Pittsburgh's one of those teams that they still play hard, even when you think they're down, especially against the Cardinals. Even when the Pirates are really bad and they don't have great teams, they always seem to rise up and play tough against better competition.
The Cardinals always have had their problems against the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I never understood why. This team has made, Joe Musgrove over the years into a Cy Young contender, it looked like, and then Trevor Williams in his first start in his career, I believe. Yeah, Pittsburgh's tough for the Cardinals, that's for sure. You're always going to have those teams, Scott, because isn't it talked about all the time that, teams in your division are built to beat teams in the division?
Right, yeah. And Pittsburgh gets up for those games, and you've got to give them credit. They've done that for a long time. Definitely. All right, so now let's move on to our last division of the day, the American League Central. This is also a really good division, a really interesting division this year, honestly. So let's take a look at it, and let's start with, again, one of those teams that everybody wants to talk about. They're exciting. Everybody's interested. How are things in Detroit?
Man, you have that knack of getting people excited and then Detroit. But no, I do like where they're going. Casey Mize made the roster. He's going to be in their rotation. This team might not be far away from doing something, but yeah, they're going to struggle this year. You still have Miguel Cabrera on your payroll, which that's a scary thing to think about. Nothing against Miguel Cabrera as a player, because he's been a hell of a player in his career, Hall of Famer. But the rest of the team going younger. I don't know what Detroit fans are thinking right now. Like, what is this team doing? I would have tried to get something for Miguel Cabrera at some point, but they're just holding on. Can they not trade that contract?
No, because how people talk about Albert Pujols' contract being bad? You realize Miguel Cabrera is about the same player that Albert is at this point. He still has 4 years and $93 million left on his contract.
What was the actual deal, Scott? Do you know?
It was 10 or 11 years and like $270 or $280 million when they did it, but it was backloaded to where the most expensive years were later, and they're paying for it right now.
What do you like? Do you like a guy in Matthew Boyd?
Boyd's got a lot of talent. He was a hot commodity a couple of years ago. A lot of teams were trying to trade for him,
including the Cardinals.
He struggled a little bit since then, but he's got some ability. Michael Fulmer, another guy in their rotation, is not bad. I don't like their lineup. I mean, there's just not a whole lot there. We talked about Miguel Cabrera. Jonathan Schoop is there. They brought in Nomar Mazara, Wilson Ramos. I mean, it's just a bunch of guys that they've kind of brought in to fill out their rotation until some of their younger players are ready to step up. But I think, like you said, I think they've got some pieces in their rotation that are coming, and they've got some young minor leaguers that aren't too terribly far away. So I think in the next 4 or 5 years, the Tigers will start to make some noise again.
I think so, too, and I hate that it's going to take that long for Detroit, but it will take that long, and it may not be that long for this team in the Kansas City Royals. Mike Matheny at the helm, and they made a few strides last year. Granted, again, 60-game season is not a big sample size by any means, but do you like what Kansas City is doing?
I really do. I like the moves they made this offseason. They went out and got Carlos Santana. They went out and got Andrew Benintendi. Bobby Witt Jr. is coming. You got a young guy in Hunter Dozier. Jorge Soler started to hit. You got Whit Merrifield at the top of that lineup, who's just a hitting machine. I like the way their lineup sets up. Their rotation is getting better. Brad Keller is a young guy that's coming. Danny Duffy at the top of that rotation. They went out and got Mike Minor. I mean, it's not a great rotation, but it's a solid rotation. And I agree with you with the pieces that the Royals have in their lineup now and the guys that are coming in the next couple of years. I think in the next 2 or 3 years, the Royals will definitely be one of those teams you really have to watch out for.
Yeah, and I like the way they're building this team. Do you think Mike Matheny in general, do you think he's learning from his experience in St. Louis?
I think he did. I think he's taken a lot of the things that he did wrong and it has learned from it and is trying to do things differently. And, there's not, we got to remember, too, that when Matheny came in, he was taking over a World Series team that had a lot of talent, and there were a lot of expectations. There weren't a whole lot of expectations on this Kansas City team when he went there. So he's able to kind of build and grow slowly. And I think he's doing it right there, and I think they are going to be really interesting in the next couple of years.
I think they will, too. And, Scott, another team that is very interesting, and that's the Cleveland Indians. The Cleveland Indians, got rid of Mike Clevenger for obvious reasons last year with the COVID protocol stuff. And then you get rid of Francisco Lindor. And that was the biggest question for me. When was Francisco Lindor going to be traded? Where is Cleveland at this point in terms of?
That's a good question. Cleveland's going to be an interesting team. I mean, you look at their rotation, you still got Shane Bieber and Zach Plesac at the top of that rotation. Then you've got some young guys trying to fill it out, trying to find their way. and I'm not sure where they're going to get a ton of offense. I mean, they still have Jose Ramirez in the middle of that lineup. You brought in Eddie Rosario to add some thump. But other than those two guys, I mean, you're counting on guys like Framil Reyes and Josh Naylor and Jake Bowers and Roberto Perez. I'm not sure that they're going to score a lot of runs. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on that pitching staff. And I think Cleveland's going to take a little bit of a step back this year. You know, they got a lot of young players in those trades they made. But I think it's going to be, again, with Cleveland, kind of like we talked with the Royals and the Tigers, I think it's going to be a couple of years before they're back at the top of this division.
Yeah, I would think so too. Now to Minnesota, and the Twins have the Bomba squad back. I mean, you did bring back Nelson Cruz. That was a great move in my mind for the Minnesota Twins. They are a good regular season team, but can never win a postseason game. Does that change this year? What is Minnesota?
They need to not play the Yankees in the first round of the playoffs this year. If that could help them, that would be big. Minnesota's going to be good again. You know, they improved their offense, probably not quite as potent as it was. Eddie Rosario not there. They did go get Andrelton Simmons to be shortstop, so that'll help their defense. Their rotation is, you know, they've got Kenta Maeda at the top, Jose Barrios, Michael Pineda, J.A. Happ, and Matt Shoemaker in their rotation. I think they're a solid team. I think they'll probably be in the hunt for the wild card, but I think they take a little bit of a step back from the last couple of years as well.
How much of a step back are you talking here, Scott?
I think they'll be fighting to get the wild card spot. They're in the wild card hunt. Okay.
And the team that many pundits have winning this division is the Chicago White Sox. And the one questionable move I'll say they made is bringing in Tony La Russa at his age. That is the only thing that I can question, because Tony La Russa is taking over a team with a bunch of young studs. I don't know how this is going to work, man. I really don't. I mean, I think this is going to be a good team. I just don't know how it's going to work out with Tony on the bench.
You know what? You've got a bunch of young studs, but if you can't play for one of the greatest managers in the history of baseball, then there's something wrong with the team.
I get it. I get it, Scott, but I mean, this is a really young team, and Tony is used to veterans. Yes, he has, you know, some young guys sprinkled in here and there, but you realize when the Cardinals were good, you know, when Pujols came up, you went out and got Edmonds. You went out and got Rolen. So he's coming into a team that's basically homegrown. How's this going to work? That's my whole question, you know.
He's got veterans on this team, though. You've got guys like Tim Anderson and Adam Eaton and Yasmani Grandal and Jose Abreu. You've got a bunch of guys that have been around for a while.
Lance Lynn, too.
And then you've got Dallas Keuchel and Lance Lynn in that rotation. So it's not like everybody there is a bunch of kids. There's a bunch of guys that know how to win. And I think they're going to be good. You know, you look at that rotation, and you got Lucas Giolito at the top of it, who's one of the best young pitchers in baseball. And then you got the two veterans that know how to win in Keuchel and Lance Lynn. And then you got Dylan Cease and Carlos Rendon closing out that rotation. And that rotation is good enough that Tony decided that Michael Kopech is going to be in the bullpen this year. So the White Sox are going to be really, really good, I think. And I think TLR is going to prove people wrong, prove the doubters wrong, and prove yet again why he's one of the best managers in baseball.
All right, Scott, I'm going to go first on this one because I want your instant reaction to my prediction here. I got the White Sox finishing first. I have the White Sox finishing first. I have Minnesota second, Cleveland third, Kansas City fourth, and Detroit fifth. Any problems with that?
Nope. I'll give you mine real quick. I've got the White Sox winning the division at 92-70. I have Minnesota second, 2 games out, 90-72. I have the Indians in third place at 86-76, 6 games out. I have the Royals at 80-82, 12 games out, and I have the Tigers at 75-87, 17 games out. So we agreed on how that division plays out.
Wow, I can't believe we agreed on that. I'm kind of glad we did because great minds think alike, right, man?
Yep.
So let's get into these awards too, because a couple of these were tough. You know what I mean? A couple of these were like really hard to pinpoint. And I kind of want to start with AL Rookie of the Year. And Scott, you mind if I go first again with this?
Nope, go for it.
So I got my AL Rookie of the Year being Jo Adell in Los Angeles. And this is a kid that's been talked about for years and years. I could definitely see a big-time year out of Jo Adell. So that's my AL Rookie of the Year. Your thought on that?
Not bad. He was definitely in my thought process. I gave him some consideration. I'm going closer to home. I'm going to the other side of the state, and the young shortstop stud in Kansas City and Bobby Witt Jr. I think he's going to be a monster in that lineup. I think he's going to hit a ton of home runs in Kansas City, and I think he is my choice to win the Rookie of the Year in the American League.
My NL Rookie of the Year is Ke'Bryan Hayes from the Ke'Bryan Hayes is a kid that's going to be good for a long time. You know, I've liked this kid ever since I heard of him being a prospect. The one thing I'll question if I'm Pittsburgh is he going to resign? Because he's already declined a contract extension. Now, what do you think on the Ke'Bryan Hayes front?
Well, I mean, the Pirates still have control of him for like 6 years.
No, but you know, it's a good idea to try to extend this.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you can get him to do it, it's a great move for Pittsburgh if they can get him to sign and get that cost certainty, eat up a couple of years of those arbitration years. And I agree with you. I think he's going to be a really good player, and I considered him as well. My Rookie of the Year. I'm moving to this side of the state, and I'm going with a guy we know pretty well. I think Mr. Dylan Carlson wins the National League Rookie of the Year.
You're not basing this off your bias, are you? Because I don't want to be biased in these picks. That's why I kind of strayed away from the Cardinals. No, not at all.
I think Dylan Carlson's going to have a monster year.
I think it'll be Dylan Carlson and Ke'Bryan Hayes in the National League fighting for that. I really do. It's going to be a fun race to see who wins Rookie of the Year out of those two. And those two, in my mind, are the only real contenders, don't you think?
I mean, there's usually somebody that you don't expect that pops up and comes out of nowhere that has a really big year. But those would definitely be the front runners.
Yeah, they would be the front runners. And let's go to Manager of the Year now. And I'm going to start in the National League. My Manager of the Year resides in Philadelphia, and it's Joe Girardi. He's finally going to, get over the hump with this team, and they're going to go up. They're going to make the playoffs this year, and it's going to be Joe Girardi. So, was Joe Girardi on your list?
Yeah, he was. I had Joe Girardi on my list. I was thinking about the San Diego manager as well, but you're going to say, did you do this by bias? But no, I'm going with the guy from St. Louis. He's going to win his second Manager of the Year because he's going to get to the Cardinals to the postseason again. And he's going to shock some people because they're going to win the National League.
Yeah, I hope it's going to be a good race when it comes to Manager of the Year also. My AL Manager of the Year is in Toronto and Charlie Montoyo. This team last year didn't go to new heights because I knew this team was going to be good, and I had them winning that division last year. And I think this year is going to be even better, and he's my AL Manager of the Year.
It's a good pick. That's a good pick. My Manager of the Year is going to prove the doubters wrong. He's coming back from a 10-year retirement, and he's going to lead his Chicago White Sox to the American League Championship Series. I'm going with Tony La Russa, one of the greatest managers in Major League Baseball history.
Wow, you're gonna have Tony coming back. I mean, this is gonna be his first year managing in 10 years.
Yep.
What went into your mindset there?
Just because I think he's gonna, everybody's questioning him, but I think he's gonna come in. I think it's gonna be a seamless transition. I think those players are gonna fall in love with him, like most of his players that played for him have. And I think that he'll lead that young team to win the division, and I think they'll get to the American League Championship Series.
Wow, Scott. I mean, that's a way far prediction there. I mean, I'm not saying they won't, but that's interesting.
Yep.
I'm going to start in the American League with the Cy Young Award, and this is a, in my mind, it has to happen for that contract to be any good with the New York Yankees, and that's Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole, in my mind, needs to be the best pitcher in the American League for the money he's getting paid. This is a guy who stood out in Pittsburgh. Then he went to Houston, pitched well there, and now he needs to own up to his contract. So I'm gonna go Garrett Cole in the American League.
That's a good choice. Can't go wrong with Garrett Cole. I went back to Chicago. I'm going with the guy that's going to be the leader of that White Sox team that I predicted. Lucas Giolito going to win the Cy Young in the American League.
Nice. In the National League, I have Jack Flaherty. I mean, this is another where this needs to happen to solidify himself as the ace. This has to be the year where Jack Flaherty owns up to it and goes in. And there's a lot of tough pitchers in the National League. I could have picked a ton of different guys, but Jack Flaherty, in my mind, is poised to have a breakout year.
I agree with you. I think Jack Flaherty will have a breakout year. I don't think he wins the Cy Young, though. I think it's going to be tough, and there's a lot of guys that are more established. I actually went with a pitcher from the Mets, but not one that you would expect. I didn't take DeGrom. I didn't take Syndergaard. I'm taking one of the new guys, and he's going to miss his first couple of starts, but I still think he wins the Cy Young. I'm going Carlos Carrasco.
Ooh, come back from what he came back from to win the Cy Young Award. That would be awesome. Coming back from a cancer diagnosis, being where he was, and now getting a chance in a rotation. That would be pretty sweet in my mind. But I hope Jack Flaherty has a great year this year. That's why I picked him.
I think he will. I think he will have a good year.
So I'm going to go my NL MVP first, and that is I know I was going to stay away from bias here. That's Nolan Arenado. I want to see this guy ball out in St. Louis. I want to see what he can do in a lineup like this. I mean, this lineup is lengthened out a little bit. You have Goldie and Arenado hitting back-to-back, so that could take away votes from each other if they have great years, which I do expect. But I got Nolan Arenado.
That's funny because I went with the other one. I've got Paul Goldschmidt winning the NL MVP.
You have Goldie winning the MVP. I have Arenado winning the
That'd be great.
Wow.
Yep. I think Paul Goldschmidt's going to have a huge year.
I hope so, man. I hope you are right. I'm going to go the consensus American League MVP every year, and it's Mike Trout. Mike Trout is undoubtedly the best player in baseball, period.
He's in another league.
And, until I'm proven wrong, until he has a bad year, he is the best player in baseball. He has not had a bad year yet. And he's only 28, Scott?
Yep, he's still young. Yeah. It's a shame that he's as good as he is and nobody knows who he is. But you can't go wrong with Mike Trout. I'm going in the same division, but I'm going to another guy that people don't know a whole lot about. I'm going Matt Chapman, American League MVP. Oakland A's, third baseman.
Explain yourself. I like Chapman, but explain yourself.
Other than Nolan Arenado, he's the best third baseman in baseball. He's super talented. I expect him to have another completely healthy, be a 30 home run, 100 RBI guy, and he plays third base. He's just a half a step behind Arenado. He's that close to being as good as him defensively. So I think Chapman wins the AL MVP. And I think Oakland wins the division, so that'll help.
That will help, that's for sure. Well, those are our predictions. I cannot wait to hear some of yours. It's going to be fun. I'll be watching some prediction videos. I'll even go online. I may it'll be interesting to see how many different predictions we get, Scott. Are you giddy for this time of year, man? It's going to be
I'm ready. I'm ready for it to start on Thursday, that's for sure.
It's going to be a fun season. I caught myself watching the Nationals Astros spring training game today because most starters are playing the whole game. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just get this started now. I don't care.
Right.
Nolan Arenado. Speaking of Nolan Arenado and my MVP pick, he hit his first Cardinal home run today. Granted, it's spring training and you can't really, but it is awesome to know that Nolan Arenado has already hit a bomb, and it's hard to hit home runs there. He didn't have a great spring, but he's going to have a great season. What's your projection for Goldie and Arenado? And I believe I just lost Scott. Well, thank you guys for watching today. It's been a great show of predictions. We will be, kind of ironing out our predictions for, guys in general, like Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, and we'll also go around the league on the nightly show this week. So for Scott Tobin, I'm Joe Hamilton. We will see you guys tonight for Crunch Time Nightly.
See you get Scott back.